Hi, and thank you for joining me for another episode of Love Your Work. This is my opportunity to talk with guests who do work that they love, and they will share the lessons that they've learned on their work journey just for you. And today I have with me Theresa Strickland. She is the founder and director of the Women's Corporate Board Readiness Program at Santa Clara University. Theresa, how are you?
I'm fine. Hello, Whitney. Thank you for having me. Thank you.
It is my absolute pleasure. So we met on the phone a couple of years ago when I was exploring the program that you run, the Women's Corporate Board Readiness Program. It wasn't time for me then. And then I joined the program in October of last year. I just want to say, had a blast, learned a lot, and it has helped tremendously. But I'd like to start our time talking about the program. You're the founder, why you founded this program, and what is the purpose of it?
Well, I'm the co-founder. So Dennis Lanham, who runs the Silicon Valley Executive Center, and I founded it. I am the faculty director to it. So I pretty much I carry the load in it. That is pretty much my job. I think that it is really important for women like you and I, to pay it forward to other women.
Yeah.
And I've had a rich career, and I've noticed along the way that women aren't always very nice to each other. You and I've talked about this, Whitney.
Yes. Yeah.
Where I think that we could hold each other up, open doors for each other. We tend to be really competitive with each other, and it's always saddened me.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't like it, but I don't want to complain about it. So I put myself in positions where I can pay it forward to other women. And we thought that this would be an outstanding opportunity to create real curriculum. This isn't just a come by, listen to 6 or 7 women talk about this experience. This is 1 month worth of curriculum that earns you a digital badge, which is equivalent to another master's degree, which certifies you in corporate governance and roles and responsibilities of being on a board. Creating the program for women was just so essential because the makeup of boards in the past have been mostly men, white men in their 70s, and they tend to sit in the same board positions for years and years and years.
Right.
That is not good for companies. That's really not good for companies. So when you create diversity between people of color, women, age groups, we know through data, this isn't anecdotal, we just know through data that when you pull the covers back on those companies, they have a higher shareholder value. For me, it was really important to make sure that we created a platform where we could set women up to succeed, teach them everything they need to know about being a board, because being on a board can be a full-time job. You know,
Right.
that you
Right.
sit on boards, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they will suck you dry, right?
If you let them,
Let
right?
them,
Yeah,
right?
absolutely. Yes.
Exactly. And that's part of the curriculum, is that it's not your job when you're on the board to do their job. Your job is to advise, to make suggestions, to lead, right? And so with the law that was signed by Governor Jerry Brown, that stated in the state of California that all corporations had to have at least 2 women by the year 2022 on their board, it really opened up an opportunity for us to dive into this area. And I will tell you, I'm really proud of this, including you. I'm always so proud of you, Whitney, is that all the women, we're headed into our 5th cohort, which is this May 5th and 6th, right? And it splits between June. All the women that have come through our cohort, 70% of them are sitting on boards now. And I keep track of it. You know, it's something I do. I keep track. You know, I'm always after you guys, put that on your LinkedIn, right? Let us celebrate you.
I
And
still have, well, and I take it back. I did do it over the weekend. I promised you I would, and I did. I did get the boards on there. I didn't do some other stuff, but I did get that on there. So,
Because no one will toot your horn the way that you do. And I think it's important. You have to be control of your destiny on that. So that's the reason. And
you know,
it's
and
really
it's interesting you say that, because that's one of the things that men don't tend to have a problem doing, even when their horns don't deserve to be tooted necessarily, right? They are still willing to, because they know that's how the game is played. And women tend to sit back a little bit on our heels, rather than, and it's not even necessarily tooting your own horn or bragging or putting, is just saying, this is who I am, this is what I do, this is how I can help. And if we don't share that, then no one will know, right?
exactly. And we teach that in the class. We ask you to get comfortable in uncomfortable positions. And that includes standing up, looking someone in the eye, and bragging about yourself
Yeah.
in a short, condensed way, communicating where you add value to a board. I got to tell you, Whitney, there's not an opportunity that passes me by with people I meet, with people that ask for my help, or people I work with, or I will draw a conclusion, say you should. And most recently I did this to a corporation because they were so messed up. They had no one on their board with marketing, branding experience. Said to him, you should add me to your board. I can add value because I am a brand and digital marketing expert. Sure enough, I'm sitting on that board today.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's not letting those types of opportunities pass.
Right.
Where to your point, a man would have said that. And so we teach you to have that jump in your step, to reach out there. Women are we have different tools. We're humble, right? We have to stop saying, I'm sorry.
Yes.
Stop apologizing for ourselves. There's just no room for it. And we deserve to celebrate ourselves and each other.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And that was one of the things that I really loved about the program. And, you continually through the course of the program, challenging us to do that, to step out of the comfort zone, right? And say, this is who I am, this is what I have to offer, and owning that. So thank you for, personally, but thank you for doing that for so many women in and outside of the program.
Yeah, for sure. And like with you, Whitney. So your cohort ended, but we're still in communication all the time.
Yeah.
We get asked to recommend women for board positions. So we make sure that all your board bios go out. We stay in touch. We help each other. We open doors for each other. And see, that is what a true sisterhood is.
Yeah.
And you hear me refer to the program, to the women, and welcome to the sisterhood. It's not a man bashing program. I love men and there's so much to learn. And I do, I bring in a few men to teach
Yes.
some of the things, but mostly this is a program for women, by women, and really impressive women who are just like you and I, that get a lot of joy out of paying it forward. My favorite part is that I get to become friends with everybody. And that is really pretty spectacular.
I was going to ask you, what do you love about what you're doing? And that's good to know that, it's about community, it's about fellowship, it's about friendship, it's about support and encouraging and lifting up, right? And empowering people. So is this someone that you've always been, or is this something that happened later in life through some experiences or something?
I had great parents and they always pushed me. My dad especially, push, get involved. And of course, he was always with my mom in the front row, right? So I was really fortunate. Of course, I have 2 kids and I raised my kids that way, using words like, I believe in you, yes, you can, right? I think that's really important. I teach at the executive level and I use those words a lot. Yeah, I think as you grow older, though, I would tell you, and of course, most of us experience this, you really come into your own and you it's where you hit a certain age and you say, I'm no longer going to apologize for being really smart, for having a point of view. Where if I was a man, you think I was brilliant. And being a woman, I sometimes get called that B word, she's this or she's that, and not fair, but I'm not going to apologize for who I am. I'm
Yeah.
not. Yeah, it's just, and I think the more women that come to that realization, it's a cleansing. It's really, it's a mikvah. It's like, oh God, that's off my shoulder because I am who I am.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was one of the things that stuck out to me as well in the program, is the concept of being who you are, right? That we can lead with feminine energy,
Mhm.
and it's needed, right? And so we don't have to be pretend to be men or try to lead like men or be men light or like or any of that. Just be who you are and let who you are be good enough. And if an organization doesn't recognize that, doesn't respect that, doesn't want to utilize that, really that's their loss. And there's another organization or there's another company that absolutely would embrace exactly who you are. And so finding your place is about not just what the company wants, but what you want, and finding that synergy that brings the two together.
Right. We call it own who you are, right? Don't put a picture out that's 20 years younger. You're beautiful. Own who you are. If they don't appreciate that, they're not your people.
Yeah.
I use that term a lot. Do your own research. Look at, especially if they're public, look at who is on their executive team, who's on their board of directors. You could pretty much find out anything. If they're all black, maybe that's not okay. If they're all white, maybe that's not okay. If you're looking for diversity, men and women, you have to pick where your people are, and you get the choice in that. So do your homework so that you set yourself up. But we teach that in the program too. How to tackle those difficult scenarios, how to present yourself, the questions that you ask as a board member versus being an executive in the company, because that's a common mistake that board members make. They think that, okay, I'm here as a representative for the audit committee, so I need to step in and audit them.
Right.
Not true. It's not your job to do their work. And yet you see dysfunctional boards that do operate like that. We know that 99% of all men and women that sit on boards have had no training, and they've learned on the job. And that is just scary, Whitney, when you think about Sarbanes-Oxley and the law, the fact that board members can go to jail. It just behooves everybody to be able to get some training. Things have loosened up now. There's more training. There's programs out there. Of course, I think ours is the best for lots of reasons, right? We give you an executive coach that works with you.
Yeah.
For 4 to 6 hours. We teach you how to brand and market yourself. We put you in front of other corporate directors and have you, tap into them, get their feedback, right? We teach you how to write a board bio and the comparison between your resume, board bio, and LinkedIn, and how important they are. And
Right.
yeah, roles and responsibility, governance. In this next cohort, I've added 2 new classes because they are the hot topics in boards. One is ESG, which stands for Environmental Sustainable Governance, right? Which is very important. And the SEC under President Biden is creating policy now around ESG, right? Where they are starting with big corporations, public corporations, to make sure they go in to make sure that they have policies. Then it's going to go to private corporations, it's going to trickle down. So
Right.
giddy up, get ready, right? And then the other one is cybersecurity,
Yeah.
which is a huge topic. And so I think the great thing that we all do together is we keep each other current on curriculum. And then as we add new classes, we invite back the women who came before you. Like I know, Whitney, you're coming to cybersecurity and ESG training. We make sure that you're up to date. And that's just all part of the sisterhood.
That's awesome. That's awesome. And so let's talk a little bit about how you got where you are and why this including women on boards, diversifying boards is so important. Where did you start in your career?
Well, I started as I came out of college. I went into a training program with Macy's West. I had somewhat of a double special major where I majored in merchandising and then also design. And so I got into the training program. I went through all of that. I became a buyer. And I am responsible at Macy's. I am one of three people, the other two guys. That was when Macy's had an East and a West, and we created the Tools of the Trade brand. And
Okay.
it's my first experience of really traveling all over the world and developing a brand and product around it. And it is a really successful brand. Still today, it is Federated's private label brand worth billions and billions of dollars. So I can happily say I'm one of the founders of that. I went through all of that and became a vice president for Macy's. I had all the tabletop upstairs and downstairs. I had great training. And I worked for an incredible man who was a mentor to me. His name was Michael Steinberg. And boy, he used to beat me up one side and down the other, but always in a loving way, always with love. I
Mhm.
learned a lot. And I was approached by Pottery Barn to come and work at Pottery Barn. And, I wasn't so sure. Macy's was pretty much in their heyday then. And they had been purchased by Federated. Pottery Barn was pretty little. It was about $271 million. But my mentor, the CEO, he encouraged me. He said, this would be very good for you. And I love telling this story. On my very last day there, just him and I, we had breakfast in his office, and it was just very meaningful, that kind of classy send off. Went to Pottery Barn and was very active, ran all of Pottery Barn, and I was the leader who vertically integrated the company, and we grew to a $4 billion company.
Wow.
Took advantage of our name and the high equity brand scores that it had, and branched it off to internet, kids, bath. I was there during all of that. And so it was a very exciting job. I learned a lot. It was probably one of the hardest people I'd ever worked for, but I learned a lot. And sometimes those difficult lessons are hard.
What was one of the lessons that you learned in scaling Pottery Barn?
It's really vertical integration. So meaning that I like to talk about it as the Olympic circles. So instead of one group of people doing the majority of the work, you have many different groups of people, and there's an overlap between them. It's visual, it's merchandising, it's sourcing, it's design, right? And it's really in those gray areas, that's where the real work is done. So you create pods of people. That's a really difficult scenario to manage and change, but it was so the right thing to do. We were opening 35, 38 stores a year, right? We were growing. It was a tremendous experience, traveled all over the world and just learned a lot. Have lots of brothers and sisters of all different ethnicities all over the world. And I loved the job. And so it was just great. People still kind of affiliate me to that brand name, because that was where the major growth happened.
Okay.
From there, I took a little break, got my executive MBA at Santa Clara University, which created the partnership between myself. When you're in an executive MBA, your professors are your peers.
Okay.
Yeah, and about halfway through that program, I was hired by Cost Plus World Market to be the executive vice president of merchandising, sourcing, marketing, the whole thing. I pretty much had most everything other than the CFO had the other stuff, who I loved. And I picked up all kinds of Wall Street skills. The CEO taught me how to speak and handle Wall Street. And I got to go to all the conferences. I became somewhat of a spokesperson for the company, and it was a wonderful experience, and stayed there about 4 years, and then went to the holding company that owns Sears, Kmart, and Land's End. They created a special job for me. It was Chief Home Design, Branding, and Strategy Officer for all three brands, Kmart, Sears, and Land's End. And I started living bi-coastally in downtown Chicago and in San Francisco, and was kind of on a plane every other week.
Wow.
Traveled a lot. It was really exciting. It ended up being one of my favorite jobs. And I never really fit in, right? It was just very different, but it taught me a lot about relationships and merging, kind of an old brand, which I called an aircraft carrier, with newness and moving forward. And we were quite successful in that time. And then from there, I worked with my CEO on a B2B program for the company. And as I started to write the business plan, I quickly realized I'm writing this plan around myself. So I separated myself and I did a startup, raised money, created a whole line of product with my team, hired designers to come in and sell our product for us, created apps that we could drag and drop our product in their home. And yeah, I exited it, sold it off, sold the different pieces. And today I am the CEO to Chief Home Design, which does a lot of digital marketing, PR work. But we also have a big side of our business where we do interior design, general contracting. I've just kind of let the business come naturally to us. And I run the Women Corporate Board Readiness program, and I am an executive professor at the University for Business. Yeah.
Okay.
So,
And I know you sit on a number of boards, right?
and I sit on 5 boards. 3 are work. 3 are a lot of work. The other 2 are nonprofit. They don't take so much of my time. But I'd say 2 of them are really the intensity of work. One of them I'm the audit chair of, which I love, and the other they created a committee with marketing and digital.
So they created so you have companies creating positions for you, you're creating companies, and then you're on companies that are creating committees for you. You just, everywhere you go, you just exude this can-do attitude and this creativity that just, I guess, draws to you things that need to happen.
Thank you for saying that. That's really nice. Listen, it just doesn't seem that foreign to me because it's kind of how I am, and I'm really happy. When you like what you do,
Yeah,
then it doesn't seem like work because you're just doing what you do.
and that's true, but at the same time, there are only 24 hours in a day. You have a family, right? So how do you manage all of this? I won't say balance. I know a lot of people don't like balance and claim that makes it difficult for women, but we can find harmony or integrate or whatever word you choose. How do you manage all of the things that you're doing?
I think
And still show up,
you have to set a precedence for yourself. And I've always had a really strong work-life balance precedent for myself. So when it's 6 o'clock, I'm done. I go and
I love that. I love that.
I mean, I go and work out. I go do what I'm going to do. I am not impressed with people that work 16 or 17 hours a day. That's working hard, not smart. And in companies, no matter where you work, as above, so below. So when employees see the leader at the top establishing a really strong work-life balance, then they will do the same as well, because you're sending a message to them that that's really important. I think that when you send that message, your employees and you're healthier, right? You're happier.
Yes.
And yeah, and it's not unusual. I mean, today we're stuck in our homes, right? But to be in a scenario in the office, no, I have a hard stop. I'm out of here. If you want to talk to me after I've done everything else, I'm happy to, or I'll talk to you first thing in the morning. But once you set that precedent around yourself, people respect it and they start doing the same to themselves. I am asked that question a lot, that balancing act. I really think it's more fair to ask not women like me, because I have been blessed by being able to achieve a socioeconomic status for myself. I started at the bottom. I just worked and worked and worked.
Mhm.
It's really the woman who hasn't been able to establish that, where she has to ask herself, is it more fundamental for me to stay home or for me to go to work and spend that money so I have to hire childcare? I've been able to surround myself with a support system. But
Yeah.
I will tell you that it is my husband, the husband that I chose, who is my best friend that I've been married to for 30 odd years, that is my biggest fan and my biggest supporter. And he's always pushed me, to do more and believed in me. And so I haven't had that struggle where I've had to have a friction with my partner. My partner has always been there for me, and I've always been there for him too. And I was a great mom because of it. You teach your kids when you travel and you're gone, you teach them security, that I'm coming back, right? They learn the lessons of what you have seen. When they were really little, I used to write them a letter for every day and tell them, okay, mommy's in Indonesia. This is what people look like. This is their culture. This is their religion. Then it kind of went to the fax machine, then to email. We progressed over time, but we always my family, we use the moon as a standard. Just remember, when you miss me, if you look up at the moon, we're looking at the same moon.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and something about that has always been really sweet. We say it to each other all the time, still today, and they're all grown up. So yeah, so I don't know if that's a formula that works for every woman. It certainly has worked for me.
Well, I think the part of the formula that works is that you figured out what works for you. And ultimately that's the bottom line, right? When we stop comparing ourselves to what other people are doing or what other people aren't doing, and look at our own lives and the people that we are navigating life with or traveling life with, our spouses, partners, or children, whomever, and figure out what works for you as a unit, right? That's the key. Have a vision for your life, understand what your priorities are, and then live that, and don't worry about what other people are doing. And if it works for you, then it works for you. And if it's not working for you, then you have to take a step back, do some reassessment and evaluation, and make some adjustments. And I think as long as we do that, then we can find the balance, the harmony, the peace, integration, whatever people are calling it. You can find that, but you can't do that by saying, oh, look at what Theresa does, I'm going to do what Theresa does. Or
Exactly.
someone else doesn't do anything, and they're a stay-at-home mom, and they're happy, and so I feel like, oh, I have to be no, that's not
That's right.
that's not the answer, right?
That's not the answer. And see, when I say women being kinder to each other in this area, we could accomplish so much. If
Absolutely.
if a woman decides that she wants to stay home with her children, I think it's inappropriate for us to say as women, well, she doesn't work, because oh my gosh, she
Yeah.
works a lot harder than me. And if I had made the choice to stay home with my kids, which I didn't have that choice at that time, right? But along the way, if I had made that choice, I would have been on the 11 o'clock news that had killed my kids, right? I've never felt any guilt for this path that I've laid out for myself. And her, right, that stays at home, she shouldn't feel guilt. She's made that
No,
decision.
absolutely. If that's
Right?
the decision that you make with your family, that's
That's
the
right.
right decision. I think one of the things that hopefully has been a lesson learned out of the pandemic, the last 13 months or so, and people being at home is that we need to give ourselves some grace.
Yeah.
We need to look at what is and then make some decisions, whatever those decisions are that weigh the variables that are as a part of your life's equation, and then figure out what works for you and stop worrying about
Yeah.
whatever else is going on somewhere else. And I think if we could do that, extend grace to ourselves, we'd be less judgmental about what other people are doing. And we could get to what you were talking about when we started this interview, which is being more supportive of each other and lifting each other up and helping without the competition and feeling like my success, it has to be at your expense. My success is at your expense, or vice versa. There's enough to go around for everyone.
Right.
And we just have to give ourselves some grace and lighten up a little bit.
Yeah, honestly, right? That, and you know this, Whitney, because all of us together in the Women Corporate Board Readiness Program, we've created that culture.
Yeah.
We call it the safe space. We use that term, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas, so that we carry a lot of guilt, and it's always right here. It sits in your chest,
Yeah.
right? Things that have happened to us along the way that frankly, they hurt. They hurt because it is personal. That statement, oh, it's just business, it's not personal, that is unadulterated crap, right? Because
Yeah.
everything is personal, right? So in our space with other women, to be able to share those experiences and quickly find out that 99% of the women in the room, they've all been through something very similar. And that part of the class, watching all of you become very close, bond from all different backgrounds,
Yeah.
all different business backgrounds. It's moving to me. It really moves me. Sometimes my eyes water up. You guys don't see it, but I mean, it's just really moving, because to me, that is the perfect world. Like, let
Yeah.
it be that.
What
Yeah.
was the very first job you had? So not after college, but like when you were growing up, maybe in high school or something like that. That wasn't babysitting. What was the very first job you had?
I worked in this little 3-store chain called the Lollipop Tree. It was a pretty successful chain. It was women clothes, and I worked between the 2 stores. I grew up in the Bay Area, kind of around the Santa Clara, Saratoga area. And, I just worked really hard. The owner really liked me. I was a little hustler. I quickly figured out that I was pretty creative, talented in the creative, and convinced her to let me do the windows and the in-store displays. And it's all those little experiences that you have that help launch and build your confidence to the next thing. It's probably why it was so important to me to also major in design, so that I understood the mechanics of how things
Mm-hmm.
fit together. I have this creativity, this artistic side of me. I get it from my dad's side of the family, where I get a lot of other things from my mom's side of the family. I've been really lucky. I've had really wonderful women in my life. And, then I got married, and then I got another mom, and she's wonderful and powerful. And so I just, they've reached back out to me and mentored me to make me who I am today. So that was my first job.
What were some of the lessons that you learned in that? Other than that you were creative,
Yeah.
and,
Well,
and you said you were a little hustler in that. It takes a lot of gumption to go to someone and say, without any, design background, I want to design your windows, or, what have you. So what were some of the lessons that you learned?
well, to ask, because all anyone can say is no. And, we teach that to our kids, at least I do. Like applying for colleges, let them say no. Oh,
Right.
mom will never get in. Well, let them say no, right? You don't know until you ask. So I would ask all the time. She would go into San Francisco, which seemed like such a big deal, right? And to do buying trips. And I asked, can I go with you? Can I tag along? I would just ask. And I find that most people are really gracious about leaning back or offering experiences to you or mentoring, whatever it is. I mean, most people are. You just have to ask, and they'll be gracious back to you. So I would go on buying trips with her. I'd help her pick out the line, and I'd watch her, right? And I compare that to these billion-dollar companies that I then went to work for. But it was really that beginning that made
Mhm.
me realize, boy, I really love retail. I'm good at it, and I'm going to get an education in this and pursue it.
I love that you figured that out along the way. And often we are doing things because our parents kind of push us in a direction rather than finding out what makes our soul sing, and it really speaks to us. And so I like that about you, and I can see how that's carried throughout your life. So what you've talked about the lessons that you've shared with your kids. Do you have any lessons that they have shared with you that you've been able to include in your work life?
Learning to say, I'm sorry. I think parenting is so hard, right? It doesn't, I mean, whether it comes easy or not, I think it's challenging. And because it's really easy for a parent to say no instead of using active listening, which I use in business all the time. So let me say back to you what I hear you saying, right? So you're seeking more information, seeking first to understand before being understood. And even with all of that, letting your kids, I've always been a big proponent of letting my kids negotiate with me respectfully, right? At the end of the day, leaders, moms, dads, they have to come in and make the decision. But
Yes.
at the, to be, for them to be able to talk to me about why it's important to them so that I could get the full understanding. However, even saying all that, you make mistakes. And I think it's really important for parents to be able to apologize to their kids, just to say, my kids are Julian and Tony, I'm sorry. I didn't handle that very well. I made a mistake. And I think that's a really valuable lesson. I think it's always interesting if you, as your kids get older, and they start to tell you things like the impact that certain scenarios had on you
Mm,
as a
mhm.
person. I'm always blown away by that. You just don't realize the impact you have on your kids' lives until they're older. Like one thing, I love this story. I don't have a very traditional family. We're a mixed family, and people stare at us. They always have, right? The lesson I learned there is that when you project yourself with confidence, people treat you with confidence, right?
Mm, yes.
If you project yourself vulnerable, they will treat you. You open up a door. And so I would say, my husband, I always said to our kids when people stare at us, and we're stared at all the time, is that the reason they're staring at you is because we're beautiful, right? I always said that. And just
Love
because
that.
someone stares at you, it doesn't mean it's a negative thing. I would tell them, just smile at them. And usually they smile back. And more often than not, people come up and say, oh my God, your family's beautiful, right? And that I didn't realize the impact that had on them until they're older, and they always bring that story up, the little stories, the little things. And I've learned from them that it's really those little moments, it's the little things, not the big things, not the bike you bought them. It's those little things that are most important, right?
Absolutely. It's interesting you share that story. I was talking with someone the other day about when other people look at you or say something about you, it's like it's more about them than it is about you, right? People tend not to be spending as much time thinking about us in the way we think they do, or that they're thinking about us at all. And so why wouldn't they look at you guys because they think you're beautiful, right? Rather than
Absolutely.
thinking it's the other way around.
Yeah, don't always determine the worst. Don't get your back up, or your panties in a bunch. Like,
I say that all the time. You're
right?
the only other
Like,
person I know this says.
let's cut each other just a little slack,
Yes.
right? Because I think genuinely, most people, the majority of people are just good, right?
And,
It may
and
take a
they're
little on your part to dig a little to find it. So,
absolutely, and they're just trying to navigate life themselves, their own way, and most of it has nothing to do with you. And so there's a Tony Robbins ism that I love, and it's that nothing has any meaning other than that which you give it. And so you can give that a negative meaning or you can give it a positive meaning. And it's the same thing in business, right? When your boss is treating you a particular way, it probably has nothing to do with you. And you're talking about, these are the kinds of lessons that translate into leadership, the way we lead in our families, the way we interact with our friends. Those are tools and strategies that we can use in business in terms of our leadership. And so, think about that and don't let everything be about you, right? And so
it's so interesting you say that, because you hear in the business world, well, that's business and now this is home and they're very separate. I don't think so. That's not my experience. You spend more time in your job and what you do than you actually do at home. So it's impossible that the two aren't integrated. So those same lessons, if you have had executive coaching in your personal life, no doubt about it that those rules, those scenarios, those learnings, they could be as important in your personal life,
yeah,
right? So we shouldn't be afraid to integrate the two.
absolutely not. Absolutely not. So I want to wrap this up with this question. So you've talked about a lot of successes that you had, starting with your first job and the things that you've learned and how that led to you determining what you would study and through your work life and ending up on boards and creating companies that you've sold and programs. What is a mistake that you've made that you think everyone needs to know the lesson that you learned from that mistake?
It's a really good question. I think I make 12 mistakes a day. I always say that, right? But I think that you have to be really careful about who you allow to mentor you. So
Mm,
one of the bosses that I've had in my career, and I'm not going to name them or the company, but this person he talked a good game about leadership and the 1-minute manager and catching people doing things right, but he didn't execute or live that way. I would watch this person beat people up, yell at them, make inappropriate comments. And I let a little of him rub off on me in that job, where looking back, I really wasn't being true to myself
mm,
because I was younger. I just thought, wow, so successful, this or that. But I look back on that, and that was just a really big mistake. It was just a big mistake, and it took me a good year to correct it in myself and sort through the anxiety of it. And this person would humiliate me in front of 500 people on a presentation that was approved the night before and then disagree with me.
mm.
Right. And so it was just some really tough lessons I had to learn there. And I feel very comfortable stating I never completely behaved like him, but I picked up some of his bad qualities in the time that I worked for him because he rewarded me for it. But once you step back and you're able to be more objective with yourself, I realized, wow, that it just wasn't right. Not right. That's not who you are. And so, it's a really fine line. You have to catch yourself. If you don't feel good about it at night when you're looking in the mirror, then abort. Yeah.
That is, so good, Theresa, because I was talking with someone earlier today about corporate leadership, and she's looking at making a transition in her job, actually moving to being an entrepreneur. And one of her challenges is this, she works with executives, and this notion that what got them there, right? The behavior that got them there, because it's rewarded. They're not interested in the coaching and changing, because that's what that's what led to their success. And so for you to recognize that it was a mismatch for you, and to say, that's not how I want to lead. That's not the kind of leader I want to be. It takes a lot of not only self-awareness, but a lot of courage to push back on that, because you easily could have said, it worked for him, it could work for me. And if I want to be a successful leader, I need to do it this way.
Right. And when you push back, I don't want to underestimate the audience or tell them that pushing back was easy. Not easy. Got the crap beat out of me, right? Not easy, but it was a really good lesson. And it took me a year to untangle it in my mind. I still, to this day, just like a typical woman, I feel guilt about it. Like, wow, but I was young. I don't want to make excuses. I think I'm very spiritual. I think life is a path, and I was meant to be on that path.
Yes,
For
absolutely.
a reason, and I wouldn't be who I am today if I hadn't have gone through that. And so that's where I need to ease up on myself.
Absolutely. Absolutely. That right there is the lesson, right? That every experience that you've had, every choice you've made, good, bad, ugly, every thing you've done, every word you've spoken, all of it, the thoughts, words, and deeds, all of it have led up to who you are in this moment. And the question is, do I like the person that I am right now? If the answer is yes, then there's nothing to feel guilty about, because all of that led here. And if the answer is no, you still don't need to feel guilty. Make some changes. That's all you need to do, right? Make the changes. That may not be easy, but make the changes and keep it moving. So,
hard for all of us, something that we're always working towards.
yes.
I think some of that is being a woman. Like I said, we have different tools. Really easy for me to preach, be strong, be confident, don't spend time on that. But it's a process.
It is a process.
The process. And sometimes this is what I always say, like when those feelings come up, okay, allow yourself to feel them, but then put it back and put it on the shelf, because it's not healthy, right? And move on.
And there's nothing you can do about the past. Ultimately, you can't change it. All you can change is moving forward. So if you are on the right path, keep going. So Theresa, thank you so much for taking the time to come and talk with us, to share a little bit about your story and what you do, and the fact that you are doing so much and making it work, loving what you're doing, and the most important thing, making a difference in people's lives, not just the women in the program, but obviously everyone they're touching, right? And the corporations and the boards that they're going to sit on, and the millions or billions of lives that are touched by the work that they're going to be doing in their communities and around the world. Thank you so much for everything you do, and thank you for being here on Love Your Work.
Thank you for inviting me. I feel blessed to have you in my life. And remember, it's just one step at a time for all of us, and we have a long reach. So it's been an honor. Thanks, Whitney.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to put the information about the Women's Corporate Board Readiness Program in the post. If it's a program that you are at all interested in, it's piqued an interest, you can reach out to me. I'm happy to talk to you, but I would suggest you actually get in touch with Theresa. She can tell you so much more. And there's a cohort coming up soon, and you can get in touch with her and talk with her about the possibility of being a part of that. So thank you for joining Theresa and I today for Love Your Work, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.